where is Secretary Mayor Poot? Because I was talking about this. Pete Buttigieg. He was too busy talking about how he thought there were too many white people in construction, so he didn't really want to say anything about this. This guy, and I know just so you know, he wants to run for higher office again. That is his life's ambition. He wants to run for higher office. But let's think back. When he first got this job, we were in the throes of a supply chain crisis. And what does he do? He didn't immediately address it. Remember, there was supposed to be this supply chain task force that he created? Have you ever heard of that again? I've never. They haven't heard a single thing from them. There was supposed to be this supply chain task force that is MIA, never apparently didn't come up with anything. And then not even 9 months, I think, into his job as Transportation Secretary, he leaves for 2 months because he goes on parental leave. He and his spouse adopted kids. He did not give birth. He didn't need to take 2 months off. I'm sorry, but he didn't. As someone who gave birth, you didn't need to take 2 months off, dude. You didn't. That was just you. This guy loves the title, but hates the work. He travels around on government jets. He took a military plane to go watch a soccer match in Europe. He's done all this stuff, but he doesn't like the work. Not even 9 months into his job, 2 months off. Now, remember, a FOIA request revealed that he had absolutely refused to speak with anyone, even in government, about the supply chain crises that were engulfing the country and driving inflation. He wouldn't address it. They had to actually numerous outlets had to actually file a Freedom of Information request in order to get information and discover that he actually wasn't really, he kept saying that he was available the entire time that he was off for 2 months. Those FOIA records show otherwise. He was outright refusing to meet with other officials to even address anything that was related to his job. So the Department of Transportation sort of operated on its own for 2 months in the middle of a supply chain crisis, right? Then we were going into Christmas. Let's not forget, we're going into Christmas. This most recent situation with the FAA, you had overburdened and antiquated systems, particularly Southwest. That's why we saw the disaster with Southwest. And then let's not forget what we saw most recently with the notice to airmen, that whole system, just, again, old and antiquated, completely collapsed. What did he do as the response? How did he address it? Remember, do you think that Secretary Pete, the mayor of South Bend, one of the maybe fourth largest city there, I guess, in Indiana, who has zero experience with transportation, did he do anything to try to push to update anything, the notice to airmen system? No, he didn't, actually. It's rhetorical. Do you know what he did do? He renamed it to make it more gender inclusive. He renamed it the Notice to Air Mission System. That was his, I'm not even exaggerating in the slightest. That was his big contribution to this. He decided to just simply rename it and then, dust his hands off. That's it. He's done. He solved everything, guys. So great, right? Look, he's just so talented. He's a joke. He thought he was going to be able to wait out until he could run again in the next, I guess, the next, election, so he could go for elected office again. And it didn't work because he was actually called to do his job and he's not doing his job. But he has all the time in the world, folks, let me tell you, all the time in the world to do everything else but anything with transportation. So he takes 2 months off of paternity leave. And he kept saying, oh, well, my kids, they have issues. You know what? It was a foreseeable thing because you adopted. This is all something, when you run for elected office, you forfeit your claim that you have private time that no one can talk to you. You don't get that. Your time is my time. We own you. We're the taxpayers. We tell you when you can go. You don't tell us, we tell you. We pay our fair share and everybody else's fair share with all your entitlement programs. I mean, how many other issues? The Southwest issue. Remember, it was Congress that had to step in because we almost had a nationwide rail strike. Congress had to step in. Where the hell was Pete? Literally nowhere to be found. Memorial Day cancellations. To say nothing of the 10 that we just talked about, the notice to air mission. He wanted to make it more gender inclusive. He doesn't even understand what his responsibilities are within the Department of Transportation. Is it any shock that it's such a disaster? Now, I will say, granted, part of this is due to the fact that I don't believe we have anybody running the FAA right now, like anybody confirmed. But that's the Senate who handles that. Pray tell, who runs the Senate? Oh, that's right, Democrats. Chuck Schumer. They've been running the Senate for quite some time now. Why haven't they actually put anybody at the head of their ridiculous bureaucratic agency? That's $1 million question only they can answer. So it's still, he's culpable because he shares the party line. He's a disaster. If this isn't the epitaph of his political career, then I don't know what is. But this is nuts. So remember this, because he's going to try to seek higher office at some point. And he's going to try to claim that he did all this stuff in Department of Transportation when he actually didn't do anything. The supply chain, he didn't do anything to solve the supply chain. I don't ever know what happened to the task force. He didn't do anything about FAA. He hasn't done anything about anything. But he's really, really good at using his government perks and taking all kinds of trips and flying around on military planes and government-owned jets and doing all this other stuff. In the meantime, he sits here and he talks about racist bridges and how there's too many white people because he's a racist. He thinks there's too many white people in construction, ignoring the makeup of like who actually is doing construction in a number of states. No, he loves the perks. He hates the work, just like a limousine liberal. And in the meantime, people in East Palestine are suffering. They're suffering. And it is just, it's so incredibly sad. Because who knows what are the long-term consequences of this going to be? I mean, coming up later, I got video for you of a woman dealing with her dead chickens. There's animals that are dropping dead. What is it? They can't fearmonger off of this to sell you wind turbines? What? Why are they ignoring it? Where's our Department of Transportation Secretary? Why isn't he tweeted one thing about this yesterday? Let me pull this up real quick. I know we got to get moving. He tweeted one thing about this yesterday. I can't stand this guy. I don't know if you can tell. He's one of the guys that I legitimately cannot stand. I cannot stand people who don't want to work. It is one of my biggest pet peeves. I cannot stand people who don't pull their own weight, especially in government, because we're paying them with our tax dollars. We all work our asses off to pay this guy so he can sit here and flex and take government planes over to watch games in Europe. Take 2 months off for parental leave. Boy, you didn't birth these kids. Ridiculous. No, he tweeted one thing out about this. One thing. Oh, I'm following that. And this was after 10 days of this, guys. He finally tweets something out. I retweeted it yesterday. And I said, oh, there you are. Finally. He wrote 16 hours ago. First thing he ever said about it. Quote, I continue to be concerned about the impacts of the February 3rd train derailment, February 3rd, in East Palestine, Ohio, and the effects on families in the 10 days since their lives were upended through no fault of their own. It's important that families have access, blah, 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 blah. We'll look into blah, blah, blah. Then he makes promises, blah, blah, blah. EPA. He's horrific. Absolutely horrific.